Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Gridiron Expert, kicking off year 4 of some of the best and most accurate college football predictions in the entire nation. Before we begin, make sure to continue to like, comment, and subscribe to us right here on YouTube, and check out everything in the description where you can go follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and get exclusive college football coverage over on our website, thegridironexpert.com. So we're switching things up a little bit as Ohio State and the Big Ten Conference will kick off the 2020 prediction season. And the Buckeyes are coming off an unbelievable season under first-year head coach Ryan Day, who was given the reins when Urban Meyer stepped down at the conclusion of the 2018 season. Ohio State, under Ryan Day, was one of the most dominant teams in the entire country, winning the Big Ten, going 13-1, the only loss coming at the hands of Clemson in a heartbreaking defeat in the college football playoff. But it should be noted that all 13 games that Ohio State won, including the Big Ten championship, including their toughest test in the regular season, all came by double digits. The closest margin of victory was 11 points over Penn State. So the million-dollar question now is, can Ohio State get back to the college football playoff? They did a great job in 2019. Can Ryan Day, with so many losses defensively, get them back in 2020? We know that Ohio State will rely heavily on their offense to get back to the playoff. They returned 6 starters on that side of the ball, and none bigger than their quarterback, Justin Fields. Certainly a Heisman Trophy candidate going into this season. One of the best quarterbacks in the country, maybe only behind Trevor Lawrence, had 51 total touchdowns last year to just 3 interceptions. That's unbelievable. And Ohio State offensively averaged 46.9 points per game. They do lose a couple big-time starters. J.K. Dobbins at running back. You got K.J. Hill at wide receiver. But they do bring in Trey Sermon, the transfer running back from Oklahoma, and Chris Olave, who led the team with 12 reception touchdowns last year, will lead that wide receiver core. Offensively, Ohio State has nothing to worry about. Defensively, they only have 3 starters back. They lost Jeff Hafley over to Boston College. They lose Chase Young, who had 16.5 sacks last year. They lose Jeff Okudah, Damon Arnett, and Jordan Fuller, all in the secondary, which might end up being a weak spot for Ohio State outside of Shaun Wade. The Buckeyes had the number 1 defense in the country last year, allowed just 13.7 points per game. But with so many key pieces to replace, you can't help but wonder, how weak will they be on that side of the ball? And you can't help but wonder also, that number 1 defense is probably going to go away in 2020. Still will be one of the best, but not at the top. We jump into their predictions here. As you can see, we've already given them wins over Bowling Green and Buffalo. We expect Ohio State to take care of business in both of those non-conference games. Of course, the biggest game, or one of the biggest for Ohio State, is right here in week 2, on the road at Oregon. This is one of the biggest games in all of college football, and we're blessed to have it in week 2. This should be a top 10 matchup, assuming Ohio State gets past Bowling Green, but more specifically, Oregon gets past North Dakota State in week 1. But it should be noted that Ohio State is 9-0 versus the Ducks. 9-0 versus Oregon. That includes that 42-20 national championship victory back in 2015, the inaugural year of the college football playoff. This is going to be a major test for Ohio State's offense. This will be the big test for Ohio State's offense. Because while we know they're explosive, Oregon's defense will be one of the best in the country, as they return 8 starters on that side of the ball from a team that allowed just 16.5 points per game last year. So while Oregon's defense might slow down Ohio State, might make things difficult for them, especially if we do have fans in the stands and Autzen Stadium is sold out for this game, we know they can do that. The million-dollar question is, can Oregon's offense generate anything against a relatively weaker Ohio State defense? Because they lost Justin Herbert. They now hand the reins over to Tyler Shugg. Joe Moorhead steps in as a new offensive coordinator. And we know that you can't beat Ohio State solely by running the ball. C.J. Verdell could put up some yards, but he's not going to be able to carry the team all the way. So Oregon has their work cut out offensively. Ohio State will have their work cut out offensively as well. It's going to be really a battle of who can move the ball just that much better. I have more faith in Justin Fields and Ohio State. They have the edge offensively, and their defense, I think, will rise to the occasion. They escaped with a close win at Autzen Stadium in one of the biggest and probably one of the best college football games of the year. And just like that, Ohio State has a huge resume-boosting win to their name, and they're 3-0 going into Big Ten Conference play. They then face off against Rutgers to conclude September. The Buckeyes won 56-21 last year over the Scarlet Knights, but one thing that should be noted is that Greg Schiano does return to Rutgers. He's now the new head coach of the Scarlet Knights. And of course, kind of a reunion as well, as Schiano was once on the staff at Ohio State as defensive coordinator. But Rutgers has not won a Big Ten Conference game since November 4th, 2017. They have lost 21 straight conference games. And unfortunately, the streak will not end on September 26th. Ohio State should take easy care at home over the Scarlet Knights. They are 4-0. They then get their bye week, to me, at a perfect time, before their big 3-game stretch against Iowa, Michigan State, and Penn State. These are arguably 3 of the toughest games on Ohio State's schedule, and I would venture to say more so Iowa and Penn State than Michigan State, kind of that buffer there. You start with Iowa. The last time these two teams met was 2017, when the Hawkeyes defeated the Buckeyes 55-24 at Kinnick Stadium. And if you think Ohio State has forgotten about that game, you are sadly mistaken. Even though Urban Meyer is gone, even though many of the players on that team that got annihilated by the Hawkeyes are gone, the fan base and the remaining players and coaches that were there for that game have not forgotten about what happened back in 2017, which ultimately left Ohio State out of the college football playoff. This game being at home, coming off a bye week, going up against an Iowa team that still has to find themselves a quarterback as Nate Stanley has left, I think all signs are pointing to an Ohio State victory. If this was at Kinnick, I might have to stop and think for a little bit. But at home, off a week of rest, I like Ohio State's chances. They then go on the road to Michigan State. I don't have very high expectations for the Spartans this year. They were dealt a horrible hand. Mark D'Antonio resigns. In February, they have to rush out and lure Mel Tucker away from Colorado. They don't know who their quarterback's going to be. They didn't have spring practice because of the coronavirus. There's not much there for Michigan State. They're going to be one of the most intriguing teams in the Big Ten because maybe they can go bowling or maybe they're going to fail miserably. Ohio State defeated them 34-10 last year. That was with Mark D'Antonio. That was when Michigan State went 7-6. And even though they have home field advantage in this one, they're not going to upset the Buckeyes. Ohio State gets another win. But this road game right here at Penn State, that's a road game that Ohio State could slip up in. That's certainly going to be a much more difficult road game than Michigan State. Remember, we said Penn State last year in Columbus gave Ohio State their toughest test. Only lost to the Buckeyes by 11. That was the smallest margin of victory for Ohio State in 2019. This is the Penn State whiteout game. We hope that there will be fans in the stands, which would mean this, of course, will be one of the most electric atmospheres and nights in all of college football. Penn State returns 8 people offensively, 5 starters defensively, are led by a dynamic rushing duo in Journey Brown and Noah Cain, a great quarterback in Sean Clifford, and one of the best tight ends in college football in Pat Freiermuth. They're also led by one of the best linebackers in college football in Micah Parsons. But it should be noted that since Penn State upset Ohio State in 2016, the game that put Penn State back on the map, Ohio State has won 3 straight over the Nittany Lions. They've won 3 straight over the Nittany Lions. That includes 2 one-point victories. But nonetheless, a win is a win. This is a major, major game because this could very well determine who wins the Big Ten East. But I look at this. We're on October 24th here. Penn State has a lot of questions at the wide receiver position. They have a few questions defensively as well, especially in their secondary. They struggled against the pass last year. We know Ohio State can sling it with Justin Fields. We know that Penn State is going to have to pass the ball to win. I don't have too much faith in their wide receivers right now. I don't have that much faith to shut down Justin Fields, as almost no one could last year. And I think Ohio State comes in to Happy Valley and escapes with a victory. It's going to be close. It's going to be close. 2016 they lost. Back-to-back years after that, 1-point victories. Last year, an 11-point victory. But Ohio State comes into Happy Valley and snags a huge win and almost all but secures the Big Ten East, assuming that they can get through the rest of their schedule here, their final 5 games. This is one of the biggest games on Ohio State's schedule, a road game. Penn State's going to give them one of the toughest tests of the year, but I think they escape just barely. At home against Nebraska and Indiana, they annihilated Nebraska 48-7 last year. That was when we really knew that Nebraska was not back and that the hype was not real. 2 years ago, Nebraska gave Ohio State a fight in Columbus, only losing by 5 points. Expect this game to be closer than 48-7 last year, but not nearly enough for Nebraska to come on the road and get the win. They're still a couple of years away from really being elite. They can get to a bowl game this year. They're just not quite ready. Ohio State gets a win here, and we'll give them the win against Indiana as well. While I do believe that Indiana is going to give Ohio State a tougher test than Nebraska, as they do return 17 starters back from that 8-win team last year, coming to Columbus, coming to the Horseshoe is not an easy place to play. It's almost impossible to win there, and Indiana simply isn't going to be the team to do it. If it was at Indiana, I might be leaning towards a trap game, but Ohio State did beat this team 51-10 last year on the road. They're going to take care of business at home. On the road against Maryland, as we all know, 2 years ago, last time Ohio State visited the Terrapins, they escaped 52-51 in overtime. Mike Locksley's squad was one of the best offensive teams in the country last year for the first 2 weeks. And then they fell off, finishing the year at 3-9. While I do think they take a step forward offensively, while I do think they take a step forward competitively and maybe in the win column, one of those wins is not going to come against Ohio State. Like Nebraska, Maryland still has a little ways to go across the board before they can really start competing against the big dogs. Ohio State gets a win here, but they have to watch out for Illinois. They haven't met each other since 2017. They haven't lost to Illinois since 2007, but we all know about the Big Ten West trap games for Ohio State. For many years under Urban Meyer, there was always that one team that might give them a fight on the road from the Western Division. It was Purdue a few years ago. It was Iowa back in 2017. They didn't see that fate happen to them last year, taking care of their Western opponents last year. Northwestern, Nebraska. Illinois is a team, though, that finally made a bowl game last year under Lovie Smith, returns 9 starters offensively, including Brandon Peters, the former Michigan quarterback. This is a game that with Michigan on deck right after that, Ohio State cannot afford to overlook. Keep in mind, Illinois did defeat Wisconsin last year in Champaign. So, Ohio State cannot afford to overlook this game. Illinois should be a decent team this year. But, as many have pointed out, the West losses came under Urban Meyer. It was just something about Urban, one of the greatest coaches of all time, who could never get over that hump when it came to that. Ryan Day made sure very early on that was never going to happen. And I don't think it happens to the Fighting Illini. They're not the best Western team that Ohio State could face. They get a win over Illinois and Lovie Smith and conclude with the game against Michigan, a team that once again has many key pieces to replace, including a quarterback. Joe Milton, Dylan McCaffrey, who knows? We know it'll be decided by November 28th. But Ohio State has won 8 straight over the Wolverines. 8 straight. They have not lost at home to Michigan since 2000. They beat the Wolverines 56-27 last year. Jim Harbaugh needs a win over the Buckeyes. He really, really needs it. This isn't the Michigan team to do it, and Columbus, Ohio is not the place to do it either. Ohio State will beat Michigan yet again. 9 straight wins in the series, and will remain undefeated at home against Michigan since 2000, at least for a few more years. So Ohio State gets another win here over their bitter rivals, and that gives them a 12-0 record. 12-0 record to end the season. Now, 12-0 means they make the Big Ten championship. If they win that over a Wisconsin, a Minnesota, maybe an Iowa, they go to the college football playoff. We know that. But I look at this, guys. This 12-0 record, we've predicted it. We believe it'll happen. There are multiple areas where Ohio State can slip up. If Ohio State's going to lose a game, it's going to come in week 2 at Oregon or right here on October 24th at Penn State. Those are their toughest games of the season. It would not surprise me to see them fall to one of these two schools. It would not surprise me at all, especially with how much they lost. I lean more towards Penn State than Oregon. I think they go into Autzen Stadium and take care of business. Penn State's the one that worries me the most. But one thing's for sure. Ohio State may be one of the few teams in all of college football that benefits the most from coronavirus, because a sold-out Autzen Stadium and a sold-out Beaver Stadium is going to be much more difficult than a 50% capacity Autzen Stadium or Beaver Stadium. Something that could really play a huge role in Ohio State's record and the outcome of those two games in 2020. Big year for Ryan Day. I do see a college football playoff return in their future. So guys, thank you so much for watching us here at the Gridiron Expert. Prediction season is back. Make sure to continue to like, comment, subscribe. Check out everything down in the description below. And once again, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time right here on the Gridiron Expert.